Well, I want to take a look at a shuffle trigger right here, specifically what would happen if you're playing this encampment into this shuffle that is fairly large. The reason it's fairly large and probably fairly ugly as well is because you take a look at this kingdom, you have familiar and you have a distinct lack of trashing around. So in these games, often the focus is going to be, let's try to play familiar as much as possible early. These games have a tendency to go a little bit uneven just because 3 potion is a kind of difficult price point to hit, and here, especially so because there's Enchantress around, which is going to make it so that some of the familiar plays get blocked, which can make it more uneven, and also because it probably means that you're going to be trying to open something like Enchantress Potion, which is really not the greatest at, or it further hurts your ability to hit 3 potion. Once we get past the familiar playing stage, as ugly as the decks will be, there is some play here. You can work with encampments, you can work with Hunter, probably get enough together with these two, along with the Enchantress Duration draw, that you can be maybe not perfectly consistent, but at least have some decent turns, and then you maybe also have Taskmaster and Ranger for some additional both draw and potentially consistency here. As I said, the game can go fairly uneven early, and this one did. In this case, we're actually looking at a position that's almost sure to win, but certainly you don't want to screw up situations where you're almost sure to win. The curse split went 3 on this side, 7 on that side. You can look over here and you can see that there's 4 encampments being maintained, and actually a 5th one that's somewhere down here, and along with 4 plunders over here. And so the risks of anything are kind of low, but at the same time, you definitely don't want to be making your turns not work unnecessarily. Why would we want to trigger this shuffle then? Well, in games where you're way ahead, actually, there's this notion that you want to play the long game, but that's not actually true. In games where you're way ahead, you want to take advantage of that and end the game while you're still ahead. And so the reason we want to trigger this shuffle is that it happens to contain an Engineer. If we go find the Engineer this turn, we can gain 2 Enchantresses, buy the last one, and win the game. That's certainly a quick way to end it. There's also some other draw cards in here, so it's not just, we're trying to look at the top card of this and find the Engineer, but it's maybe not the most likely thing ever. The other thing is, right now, we talked about Enchantress being a good source of duration draw. Right now, we are not looking at having Enchantress going into next turn, and so, next turn's looking possibly a little bit ugly. The problem is if we do trigger the shuffle and we miss everything, look, next turn's also looking pretty ugly because it's missing 4 of these encampments. And so, we have to make a decision here, how to balance that out. Win immediately, maybe get more duration draw for a better turn next turn versus, have all of these encampments excluded for however many turns this shuffle ends up being. It's about 3 actually. And so, one thing we have to consider is basically, what can the opponent do? Our opponent right now, has 3 Taskmasters out of Enchantress. This looks pretty good. And they also have 2 Rangers, and so, they're at up to 3 buys. They only happen to have 1 Plunder, but, they can be getting up to maybe 7 points in a turn. They certainly won't be ending the game on us because with only 3 buys, Enchantress is not going to make it, but, clean shuffle, everything looks pretty okay over there. So, with them being able to get 7 points, we want to be able to maintain our ability to kind of win on a minimal turn next turn. That is, do the Engineer for Enchantress and buy Enchantress thing. And so, our move here is going to be buy a Duchy. There's enough money here, maybe for a province. Maybe we'll get a province if we play this encampment and draw a little bit more. But we don't particularly want to do that because we have a Taskmaster of our own out, and that sure would be nice to keep out there. And so when we consider triggering this shuffle, the last thing is what happens if we miss. If we make it, obviously win the game. If we miss, we're going to be buying a Duchy, and also we're going to be buying some amount of Scouting Party. And so, despite having the problem where the encampments are going to be excluded from the shuffle, if we do miss, potentially we get to buy 1 or 2 Scouting Parties. We probably get to see enough of the deck that we can almost guarantee that the turn afterwards, we're going to find this Engineer. Certainly we expect to put it together with 3 coins. And so if we end up buying Duchy this turn, opponent's not catching up, we're winning the game next turn, and we're winning. And so, let's try to win it this turn, and if we don't, triggering a shuffle, we're probably still winning it the next turn. So let's go ahead and trigger the shuffle, win the game in the next 2 turns.